Hey everybody, I guess we're live and in color here. Welcome to another week of Chase for the Championship. 14 out of the 15 teams in the ACC returned to conference play over the weekend, but man, that was just the beginning of the big games in the last week. We got plenty to cover, so let's go ahead and get right to it, shall we? Now, we're only in mid-December, but already this season, 4 teams have been ranked #1 in the AP poll, and all 4 have lost. The latest victims, Louisville. WEHT's Randall Parmley is taking a closer look at the Cardinals' loss to Texas Tech in that Jimmy V Classic.
Well, another #1 team in the nation goes down. This time it's Louisville as they fall to Texas Tech on a night when the Louisville offense just could not get anything going. The Cardinals shoot only 34% against the Raiders. Jordan Wara only 14 points. So that tells you the type of night that it was for Louisville. Head coach Chris Mack even said after the game his team just was not ready to go, and it definitely showed as the Cardinals suffered their first loss of the season. The Louisville will now have a couple of what should be easy games before they take on Kentucky. That big Bluegrass rivalry coming up in a few weeks. That game will be played in Lexington. And keep in mind, Lexington has been a tough place for Louisville to play. Their last win against the Cats at Rupp Arena coming back in 2008. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
All right, thanks a lot, Randall. And our other game of the week this week, we're going back to Sunday when the North Carolina Tar Heels took a trip to Charlottesville and were completely shut down by Virginia. No other way to say that there. Covering the Tar Heels is WNCN's Alyssa Ray. And Alyssa, that's 2 straight losses for the Heels after a 5-0 start on the season. What's going on in Chapel Hill?
Well, the level of competition, Chris, North Carolina is playing unreal competition. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games, but the last 4 teams they played are all currently ranked in the top 10. The Tar Heels beat Oregon, but their losses in that stretch were to Michigan, Ohio State, and Virginia. This is UNC team that is looking for their identity and to find a rhythm with their personnel. And frankly, it's too early in the season for them to compete against veteran teams like the ones they've been playing.
I mean, Tar Heels have scored, 49 points against Ohio State and were held to 47 at Virginia. How do they get the offense to rock and roll again? How do they jumpstart that thing?
Well, they lost their top 5 scorers from a year ago after freshman Cole Anthony scored 34 points in his college debut. It was no secret they had a star, so defenses have been containing Cole since then. And besides Armando Bacot, the Heels aren't getting enough contributions from the other players. Cole and Bacot were the only players to score in double figures Sunday against UVA. And if you want to dethrone the defending national champs, you need more than 2 people to be effective on offense.
That's true. Words have never been spoken. Now, UNC's got an interesting week coming up. They host Wofford, who you might remember beat the Tar Heels 2 years ago, and then it's a trip to 6th-ranked Gonzaga next Wednesday. Can the Heels bounce back with those 2 games, or is that just a trap city there?
Well, I think after Wofford's upset over North Carolina in 2017, UNC isn't going to overlook this team. They're expected to win that one. As for Gonzaga, they're the #6 team in the country, and yet another test for a young bunch. And pretty soon, they're going to have to learn from these big games and make adjustments. After Coach Williams' disappointment at Virginia, I know these guys want to play to their potential and make a big statement.
I'm sure they definitely do there. Thanks, Alyssa. We're definitely going to be keeping a close eye on those games. Cavaliers are enjoying some time off after their win against UNC. They won't be back in action until next Wednesday, but then they host Stony Brook at 6:30. For Virginia's perspective on that big win against the Tar Heels, let's send it to WRIC's Natalie Calabit.
The Virginia Cavaliers rebounded from their first loss to the season in a big way on Sunday, defeating the North Carolina Tar Heels 56-47. This marks the Cavaliers' 5th straight in the series, their longest run ever against the Tar Heels in ACC play.
As usual, Virginia did it with defense, holding North Carolina to 18 points in the first half, tied for the fewest in the Roy Williams era. For the game, the Tar Heels made only 1 3-pointer, and UVA coach Tony Bennett credits Kihei Clark in particular for his perimeter defense on Cole Anthony.
For the most part, you just got to show up and be a pest. And I thought Kihei said, can you get into him? Can you get under him and just make him work and, use our help positioning. In the second half, we did a little better job in our transition D. Whenever you play Carolina, it's always about can you get back and be in gaps, and can you somewhat hold them off the offensive glass.
The win moves the Cavaliers to 2-0 in ACC play, but Bennett says youth is still a big issue for his team.
Got to continue to be sound with our decision making, and I think our inexperience shows up often. We're not quite used to being in that spot, And, you know, we're relying so heavily on our most experienced player, who's a second year, and Kihei Clark. And then, you know, without Braxton, that's a guy who has experience. Besides that, it's Mamadi, and no one else really played significant.
With finals on the horizon, the Cavaliers will be off until December 18th when they host Stony Brook here at John Paul Jones Arena. Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabat.
All right, thanks a lot there, Natalie. The Cavaliers have always had a top recruiting class, and they're getting another big star next season. But he's not just making an impact on the hardwood. WNCN's Todd Gibson reports on the new recruit's impact off the court.
The University of Virginia is getting one of the best guards in the nation next year. Greensboro Day School's Carson McCorkle is known for his sharp shooting and heady play. But there is much more to McCorkle than what you see on the court. He's also making a difference for those less fortunate. Greensboro Day star Carson McCorkle is thankful for what he has.
I think sometimes as players at that level, we take for granted the stuff that we get.
And then these kind of back here were donated by some people who we don't even know. They just left them off.
You can't play basketball without the shoes. It seems so simple. But for some, being able to afford quality sneakers can be a problem. McCorkle has seen it firsthand.
When you're young, you don't understand it as much because you kind of wonder, like, why would they wear ripped shoes? Like, why would they do that? But I think the older I've gotten, I've realized some more, like, wow, like maybe they're not fortunate enough to buy those shoes.
So the University of Virginia signee has decided to do something about it. He, along with some of his classmates and teammates, came up with a website, hoopstatehope.org. The goal, to collect as many usable basketball shoes as possible to be given to those in need.
It's a problem across North Carolina, and I think anything we can do to bring attention to it is excellent. And I think Carson has stepped outside and he's making an effort to do this, and he's got the other members of the team involved and members of the community involved in it.
McCorkle decided to spring into action after seeing other Virginia basketball players involved in their own causes. Collecting shoes just kind of came to him.
To be able to give back to people like that, I think it's cool because it gives them a sense of, you know, they can have nice shoes and play basketball as well, and they don't, you know, we don't want them to feel below us because we're all playing the same game at the end of the day.
Hard work and dedication have helped make McCorkle one of the top players in the entire nation. From AAU ball to high school and soon college, one thing the shooting guard never had to worry about was what was on his feet.
Being able to play the level of basketball that I play, we're also given a lot of shoes that are really nice.
And when those shoes get to the point McCorkle no longer wants to wear them, no worries, they'll find a happy home.
Yeah, just to put a kid, you know, smile on his face to be able to get those shoes, I think is really cool.
The Cavaliers are getting a good one. Hoopstatehope.org, that's McCorkle's website. You can go there, donate shoes or money. He's already gathered more than 24 pairs of shoes and looking for more. For Chase for the Championship, I'm Todd Gibson.
That's a great story and great work there, Todd. Moving on here, Duke up to 7th in the rankings this week, and they could move up even further with teams in front of them losing, but the Blue Devils are actually off all week. They won't take the floor again until 1 week from right now when Wofford visits Cameron Indoor Stadium next Thursday at 7. All those Blue Devils taking finals and classes and such. Now for the rest of the Blue Devils, comes a tough week that saw them beat Michigan State in New York City and then quickly turn around to beat Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. The Hokies actually led for most of the first half and took a 41-38 advantage into the intermission. They got that lead up to 7 before Duke evened things up, and then the Blue Devils pulled away with a 17-2 run in the second half. Final score 77-63. The Blue Devils had 4 players in double figures, including 2 off the bench. Wendell Moore Jr. and Jordan Goldwire. Coach K says his team's excited to see his team coming together.
Those are all toughness things that that I saw tonight with my team. My team's been good, but it's been different guys. Trey's been the constant, and but different guys have stepped up, and a good group. It's an old-fashioned team, man. It's an old-fashioned team, and this was an old-fashioned week.
Meanwhile, Virginia Tech rebounded from that loss against Duke to beat Chattanooga in a close one at home, 63-58. But as WFXR's Jermaine Fell reports, there's still a lot to learn from the game against the Blue Devils.
The Virginia Tech Hokies men's basketball team last week went 1-1 at the crib to go to 7-3 overall and 1-1 in the ACC. Now, last Friday at the Castle, Virginia Tech led 10th ranked Duke at halftime, but couldn't hold on as the Blue Devils turned up the defensive pressure in the second and used Trey Jones' team-high 15 points to knock off the Hokies 77-63. P.J. Horn led the Hokies with 15 points, including 3 3-pointers. And here's what Tech guard Wabisa Beatty and head coach Mike Young had to say about the game.
We're real talented. We're real talented. But we have to be able to still fight once we get punched in the mouth. Because we came out swinging and we were about to knock them out. But that's in the first half. There's 2 halves, so got to be able to do what we did in the first half and the second half, and for 40 minutes, not for 30. And that's what we did for 30. And then they got on their run.
Trey Jones is so disruptive. And he's made great progress with his game offensively, but he's a mean dude defensively. He just. I found myself this week in our preparation trying to figure out how I could eliminate him, just get him out, just take his match over here. That's easier said than done.
Now, last night, Tech looking to end a 3-game losing streak, taking on UT Chattanooga at Castle Coliseum. And the road team making things interesting, but in the end, the Hokies held on to get that 63-58 win over UTC. Now, Tech finished the game with a 16-7 run. Naheem Aline leading Tech with 22 points. Landers Nolly, the second, getting 19. And next up for Tech, the Hokies have only 1 game in the coming week as they stay at home to play Gardner-Webb on Sunday. Covering the Virginia Tech Hokies, I'm Jermaine Farrell.
That game against Gardner-Webb starts at 1:30. The Hokies will only play 1 game a week until ACC play resumes at the start of January. Moving on here, Florida State was on a 7-game win streak before losing to Indiana in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. But the Seminoles bounced back to win their first game in conference play over Clemson. WNBB's Courtney Mims has a look. Courtney.
The Florida State Seminoles were on fire Sunday afternoon as they took on the Clemson Tigers. The Seminoles outscored the Tigers 45-20 in the second half to beat them 72-53 and get their first ACC win of the season. The Noles really turned this one around because going into the locker room, they trailed Clemson 33-27. But 90 seconds into that second half, the Seminoles made it a tied ball game. And then they went off, shooting 11 threes in the second half alone and 15 in the whole game, a season high for the Noles. 8 different Seminoles hit at least 1 3-pointer in the game, and 4 of them came from redshirt sophomore guard Anthony Polite, who had a career-high 12 points in the game. However, the Seminoles did drop in the rankings just a bit as they lost to Indiana earlier in the week. They went from number 17 to now number 21 in the AP Top 25, and the Seminoles are on a much-needed break right now. No games this week at all. They will be back on the court on Tuesday to take on North Florida at home. Covering Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
That game against their Sunshine State rivals, North Florida, starts at 8:30. That is on Tuesday night. Clemson also stays at home to take on an in-state rival. The Tigers will square off against South Carolina on Sunday at 5. Man, you can bet Clemson's going to be working hard to make some adjustments before that one. Covering the Tigers is WSPA's Pete Yannity. Pete.
It's been a relatively quiet couple of weeks for the Clemson Tigers. Just 2 games since the Thanksgiving break, a loss against Minnesota. And then they fell in a return to ACC action this past Sunday at Florida State. Clemson led by 6 at the half, but then saw Florida State hit 11 3-pointers over the final 20 minutes, and that's been a big issue for Clemson. Last in the ACC in 3-point defense. In terms of defending beyond the arc, the Tigers giving them up at 35%. And with young guards like Alamir Dawes and others, the Tigers still trying to get better at defending the 3. There was a piece of good news for that Florida State game. Jonathan Baer saw his first game action for the Tigers. A big man who transferred in from UNC Asheville and had to sit out last year, played 13 minutes, didn't really make an impact, but getting him back in the flow after he suffered an off-season knee injury is certainly a plus for Brad Brownell's team as they now get ready for a rivalry game coming up on the weekend against South Carolina. Covering the Clemson Tigers, I'm Pete Yannity.
All right, good stuff there, Pete. Now, it's early, but Notre Dame finds themselves at the bottom of the ACC after losing a close one at home to Boston College. But as WTTV's Dave Griffiths reports, the Irish did manage to bounce back for a weeknight win at home before some big games coming up.
Notre Dame's week started with a disappointment. Saturday's conference loss to Boston College, snapping a 13-game win streak against the Eagles, one that dated back to when both teams were members of the Big East in 2005. Falling to 0-2 in the ACC and barely shooting 40% from the field this season, the Irish responded in a substantial way with a dominant 39-point win, 110-71 over the 1-8 Titans of Detroit Mercy out of the Horizon League. Dane Goodwin led the way, coming off the bench for 28 minutes of action and scoring 27 points. That's a career high for the sophomore, who added 7 rebounds and 4 assists, part of a 33-assist game for Notre Dame, a number that ties a program record. Obviously, they shared the ball well, and that led to a scorching hot day from the floor as the team shot nearly 60% total and better than 50% beyond the three-point line. Prentice Hub notched a double-double with 13 points and 11 assists, while John Mooney, who entered the game tops in the country in rebounding, had 15 points and 11 boards, his 6th double-double this season. Covering Notre Dame, I'm Dave Griffiths.
Good stuff there, Dave. And it's a rivalry, an old one. Back in action this weekend when Notre Dame hosts UCLA. The Bruins visit South Bend for a 3 o'clock tip. That's coming up on Saturday. And after that win against Notre Dame, Boston College is just one of 3 teams at the top of the ACC standings at 2-0. The Eagles were back in action Tuesday night hosting Albany. The Great Danes actually led this thing at one time at the half, 31-30, but it was all Eagles in the second half. BC used a 16-3 run to start the second frame to pull away for good, going on to win this thing 72-51. Jarius Hamilton led the Eagles with 16, but Stephon Mitchell wasn't far behind. He had 15 points of his own, along with 13 rebounds. And after that one, the Eagles are going to stay at home for a Sunday matinee against the Blue Devils. No, not those Blue Devils. Instead, the ones from Central Connecticut, just up the road a piece from them. That game tips off on Sunday at 1. Meanwhile, Syracuse picked up on their first conference win over the year on a visit to Georgia Tech. The Orange bounced back from 3 straight losses to beat the Yellow Jackets. Final there was 97-63. And as WSYR's Stephen Infanti reports, the Orange are learning a lot from their tough early schedule.
Well, there are positives and negatives to this young Syracuse squad opening up the season with such a difficult schedule. Obviously, the drawback is that you run the risk of losing a bunch of games, which SU has. But there's some good that's come out of this stretch as well. These last 4 games against Power 5 opponents have showed the players, especially the freshmen, what it takes to compete at this level, what to expect night in and night out in the ACC. Now they get a week off from games to work on some of their weaknesses that were exposed down in Brooklyn against Oklahoma State and Penn State, and then in the Dome against Iowa. There's a sense of urgency at practice these days, which maybe wasn't present in the preseason. The 4-4 start was eye-opening for the Orange, but rather than backing down, the guys are embracing the challenge of turning this thing around. And based on Saturday's 34-point win at Georgia Tech, it looks like that process is already underway.
You know, these last couple of weeks in practice, we've really picked up the energy, and we've really been competing every day. And we know that, you know, we got to go hard every day. We got to bring it every day because, you know, it's only going to get tougher. And once conference play starts, it's really a battle every night. So we're just, you know, we've really picked up the energy in practice. We're holding people accountable, really attacking guys, and, you know, we need to bring that same energy come game time. So we're really practicing just like how we need to play.
Buddy Boeheim and the Orange won't play until Saturday because of final exam week. That game at Georgetown is scheduled to tip at 1 o'clock. A victory in Syracuse will likely head into 2020 on a 5-game winning streak. After the Hoyas, SU plays host to Oakland, North Florida, and Niagara to close out the non-conference schedule. Covering Syracuse, I'm Stephen Fonte.
And things don't get any easier for Georgia Tech after their loss to Syracuse. The Yellow Jackets take a trip to Lexington to take on Kentucky this Saturday evening at 5. The Wildcats are ranked 8th in the country and have only lost once this year. After that one, Tech returns home for a matchup with Ball State on Wednesday at 7. Tech head coach John Pastor says it's a lot to juggle for his players, especially during final exams.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, there's no excuse for. I mean, we still got to be better. I mean, you got to be able to get it done. But I mean, Georgia Tech's it's a world class, one of the best, institutions in the world. And so, I mean, it's for some of our guys, it's a lot on them. I mean, when you're doing the study hall and the finals, but that's part of coming to Georgia Tech. And when you graduate and you leave Georgia Tech, it's going to make you that much better, tougher, more prepared for life after basketball. So, yes, it could be tough during a stretch like this, and it's not easy, but the benefits far outweigh the negative part of it down the road when the air comes out of the ball. I mean, getting a Georgia Tech degree just is one of the most powerful things, and you don't really need basketball when that happens. And so, that's just part of being at Georgia Tech. You got to deal with it.
Man, speaking the truth, athletes, listen up, man. It's been almost 2 weeks since Wake Forest won a game. They dropped 3 in a row, including a conference game to NC State on Saturday. And as WGHP's Kevin Conley reports, the Demon Deacons are working hard to get back to their winning ways.
If you had to use one word to describe the Wake Forest basketball team to this point in the season, it would be frustrating. Wake Forest sits at 5-5 and is currently in a 3-game losing streak. Head coach Danny Manning is frustrated. The players are frustrated, and you know the fans are frustrated. But hey, it's still early. Wake Forest, which has had trouble with turnovers and has been limited out on the fast break, will have a whole week between games. Danny Manning is looking at that as a time to get back to basics in practice.
No, we all got to do better collectively, especially defensive-wise. We are dependent on ourselves, and we think about we're being real selfish, and so we just got to just play as a team.
The break in our schedule comes at a great time. Coming off this trip, we've got some days now where we can get back in the gym and practice and tighten up some things that we need to tighten up.
Just going back to the basics, playing our defense, limit our turnovers, boxing out, take care of the little things, the details that make us win games.
Wake Forest is at home on Saturday against Xavier in the annual game that honors the late Skip Prosser, who coached at both schools. Xavier is currently 9-1, ranked number 23 in the country, so it will be a challenging game at the Joel Coliseum for the Deacons. Covering Wake Forest, I'm Kevin Conley.
All right, good stuff there, Kevin. Thank you. And their win at Wake Forest was the first true road game of the season for NC State, but they'll have to get used to playing away from home. The Wolfpack take a short trip to UNC Greensboro this Sunday at 3, and then next week they'll visit Auburn. NC State will look to beat the 12th-ranked Tigers on their home court next Thursday at 9. That means everybody but Duke and Miami has now played 2 games in conference. So let's take a look at the early standings here. 3 teams are 2-0 at the top. That's Louisville, Virginia, and Boston College. Duke is a half game behind at 1-0. Then come them 1-1 teams there. Florida State, NC State, Pitt, UNC checking in there as well. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and Syracuse. That makes a 7-way tie for 5th for all you mathematicians out there. 4 teams have yet to get an ACC win this season. Miami is 0-1. Notre Dame and Clemson and Wake Forest are all 0-2. Be sure to join us again next week on Chase. We are done. That is it. Gosh, we got to get more basketball in here. We're going to take a look back at UNC's trip to 6th-ranked Gonzaga, along with this week's other big matchups like Georgia Tech's visit to 8th-ranked Kentucky. And we'll also preview the following week's slate of games, which features several big neutral site showdowns. Notre Dame taking on in-state rival Indiana. That one's going to be great. The Crossroads Classic. And Boston College travels to the other coast for a matchup with Cal. That will do it for us this week. We're going to see you again right here next Thursday at 7. Until then, man, get out to the gym, enjoy some basketball. See you next week.